Good morning, everyone. My name is Trudy Wastweet, and since last fall, I have been serving the state of South Dakota as your Deputy Secretary of Agriculture. Let me say this morning that it is my pleasure to welcome you to our 5th Annual Governor's Agricultural Summit. The program today was very thoughtfully built to generate dialogue on some of the most challenging and interesting issues South Dakota's farmers and ranchers and agribusiness industry partners are facing today. And we also want to lift topics for discussion that are part of our decision-making process as we influence those who are making decisions in our counties, in our state, and also at a national level here. There's much to be discussed on the program today, and we look forward to that conversation. We know how critical it is when we look around South Dakota and recognize that agriculture provides some 30% of the state's economic activity. So healthy consideration of these challenges and these issues is really important for us today. And so we are very glad to have all of you with us here in Deadwood. I want to start also this morning by giving generous thanks to our sponsors of the 5th Annual Governor's Ag Summit. Because of their support, we are able to present this conference without a registration fee, have some very enjoyable networking breaks throughout our program today, and learn from really remarkable subject matter experts on our program. The sponsorship from our partners really reflects the value that these folks have put on this kind of conversation about the future of South Dakota's agriculture industry and the returns that strategically can come back to businesses and their customers when we have these healthy conversations. Through the day, I will recognize our sponsoring partners individually, but as we begin our program this morning, I do want to give a very generous message of appreciation to their support of this summit. So thank you to our summit sponsors. I also will note, for the first time this year, because of the generous sponsorship we have for the summit, we are able to provide a live webcast of the summit program throughout the day on South Dakota Public Television, and you'll be able to go online and also find archived video after the program today. In a few moments, I will welcome Secretary of Agriculture Lucas Lentsch to the stage to discuss the state of agriculture in South Dakota. But before that, I would like to introduce some of our special guests this morning who are a great pleasure to have them with us at the summit. First of all, Undersecretary of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Michael Skuse, is with us today, and he'll actually be joining us on a update about the Farm Bill in a few moments. We also have with us today State Conservationist Jeff Zimbrick from the Natural Resource and Conservation Service, who also is on a panel with us this afternoon. We welcome Elsie Meeks, the State Director for USDA's Rural Development Program, and hopefully she's making it in this morning, but we note that she's here for the day. Craig Shoneman is our Executive Director in South Dakota for the Farm Service Agency, and we welcome him to the summit. We also have State Senator Mike Valley from District 20, who will be joining our transportation panel later this morning as well. State Representative Gary Kamak of District 29 is with us today. State Representative Betty Olson of District 28B will join us as well. State Representative Lee Qualm of District 21 is here today. State Representative Jim Schaefer from District 26B is here. Good morning, Jim. We are also pleased to have with us Dr. Barry Dunn, Dean of the College of Agriculture and Biological Sciences from South Dakota State University, in the audience today. And we have a number of congressional staff from across the state in field offices. Shad Christman and Chris Blair are here on behalf of Senator Johnson today. We welcome them. Mark Haugen and Lynn Schurzma of Senator Thune's staff are here. And Kyle Holt for Congresswoman Nome is expected to join us today. So we thank all of our special guests, and again, it is our pleasure to host you here in Deadwood. We are pleased to be here for the first time with the summit in Western South Dakota. We've taken some time to rotate around the state and really tackle different issues as we come across the state and bring our stakeholders together. We also will be looking forward to Governor Dennis Dugard joining us for the luncheon today as we celebrate the Governor's Ag Ambassador Award at our luncheon program. So without further ado, I will invite Secretary of Agriculture Lucas Lentsch to the stage. Secretary Lentsch was appointed by Governor Dennis Dugard in April 2013. He grew up one of 4 boys on a family dairy farm in Marshall County and graduated from South Dakota State University after studying dairy science. His career has included dairy processing, an entrepreneurial venture in food industry workforce recruiting, a tour in Iraq as a captain with the National Guard, and executive leadership for the South Dakota Republican Party, and also consulting in the financial planning industry. Secretary Lentsch is still an active partner in his family cattle and land company back home near Eden. He has brought so much energy and passion to the Department of Agriculture, and it really has helped our stakeholders and our staff at the department take on a new approach to the work that we do serving South Dakota agricultural producers and our industry. And so that has helped us really lift the bar on making South Dakota a great place to succeed and achieve great things with agriculture. So please welcome South Dakota Secretary of Agriculture, Lucas Lentsch.
Well, good morning. What a great day in South Dakota that we're here in Western South Dakota enjoying agriculture and talking about agriculture and the future of it. My job today is I have the opportunity of talking about the state of agriculture in South Dakota. And I would start by telling you the state of agriculture in South Dakota is strong. Very strong. You know, a couple things about that. Just when you're dealing with agriculture and you're looking at the history and the historical perspective, in order to know where you're going, you got to know where you've been. And a year ago, just to kind of set the stage a little bit today, in Deadwood, South Dakota, I found this picture to be pretty reflective of a situation that we saw ourselves in 9 months ago. And if you look at that map, and you're seeing a lot of Wyoming and Montana, but you're also seeing Rapid City, and this is a snowfall reports. But there it is in Deadwood, 48 inches of snow, where we're at today. 48 inches of snow, and it rocked our world, and it changed how we look at production agriculture in Western South Dakota, and it also taught us that winter can come a whole lot earlier than expected. The objective of our department, your Department of Agriculture, is to be reflective of the #1 industry it serves. One of the charges that was given to me when I first took on this role was to take that into serious consideration. The governor charged me with the idea that we have the opportunity in the Department of Agriculture to make a difference. The amount of issues that we face across agriculture in South Dakota are diverse, but the most impressive thing that we can do and the most effective thing that we can do is have a Department of Agriculture that's able to respond to the needs of the industry. Just a quick overview, and many times we think about agriculture and we think about the crops in our fields, we think about the livestock in the pastures, but your Department of Agriculture has a little bit of a diverse background with it. I'll start by describing agricultural services. That's really the division that provides the service and support for product registration, whether that be pesticides, feed, fertilizer, the chemicals that are utilized in production agriculture today for the assistance in best practices, to all of the regulatory oversight that we provide in our dairy foods industry, as well as our inspectors, our ag inspectors. If there's a drift a complaint, our ag inspectors are the ones that do the investigations on that and help find a remedy. Ag development. This is the division that works on the promotion of agriculture, but also finding those opportunities that bring value back into our state. One of the most important things that has come to my attention prior to taking this role and having since taken it is the fact that a diverse ag portfolio in South Dakota is absolutely a way that we are able to help mitigate the peaks and valleys that oftentimes are associated with production agriculture. And through that is how we've increased the economic activity in assisting in the production ag or further processing or value-added processing entities that do come into the state. Resource conservation and forestry, a fantastic division that we take for granted. We've recently had a division director, Ray Sowers, retire after many years of service, but our division director, Bill Smith, is continuing to take on the mantle of leadership and doing a great job. And I would tell you on the Ag Development Division, we also, just stepping backwards, we do also have Paul Kosboth with us today. He's our Division Director of Ag Development. And Ag Services, I'm excited to share with you that we are in the midst of an executive search for the new Division Director of Ag Services. State Fair Park, we have Jerome Hurdell. Jerome's out of the Huron area. And in the past, we've known that the State Fair has been one of those areas that sometimes can be a bit challenging. And he has done an exceptional job of making that a very solid success story in South Dakota, because it takes a lot of revenue, it takes a lot of participation from folks to be a part of the State Fair. And that State Fair Park runs year-round with activities. In fact, while we're meeting here today in Huron is the Red Power Roundup, a 25th anniversary of the Red Power Roundup happening in our backyard, and people from all over the country are coming to your State Fair Park today to enjoy it. Wildland Fire, another division that we oftentimes take for granted, and an impressive group of people that I've had the privilege of working with. Jay Esperance is our Division Director of Wildland Fire here with us today. And when you look at the commitment that our folks have on the front line, and you think about the hotshot crews, and you think about the hand crews that are out there fighting the fires, that's your fellow South Dakota citizens that are putting their lives at risk for our benefit and for the protection of our part of the state and our Black Hills. But remember, they can also be deployed elsewhere in the country as a Type 2 incident team, but also on top of that, they have helped out in Sioux Falls last year with the incredible ice storm damage that happened. It was our hand crews that were there helping clear the waterways with their chainsaws in Sioux Falls. And so it's a very diverse Department of Agriculture. And finally, I would tell you the Office of the Secretary. And why I say finally is the fact that fundamentally, we're approaching the department as the Office of the Secretary not only provides the leadership for the department, but we're there to serve the divisions. What can we do with the staff at the Office of the Secretary to best provide the service and some support for our departments? And so that's a great part of what our dialogue is moving forward. So just a quick reflection, here we are. Just took this yesterday, drought monitor. We've had plenty of rain in South Dakota. There is still a little bit of a dry patch there, but really, for the most part, we're out of it. But to provide some context, a short year and a half ago, that's what we looked like. Extreme drought. And I've heard a lot of folks that the water can be a problem to deal with, but they're glad they have it, because that's almost something you can't fix that without the help of moisture. Year in review, record-setting 2013 corn crop. Winter Storm Atlas. You know, one of the success stories out of the silver lining, if you will, out of an event like that is the Ranchers Relief Fund. We saw the South Dakota stock growers, South Dakota cattlemen, South Dakota sheep growers come together, put their heads together and provide the leadership so that they could have a program in place to take in the donations and the wonderful generosity not only across South Dakota, but across our country. With over $5 million received and given out directly to the ranching, farming families that were impacted by Blizzard Atlas, it's a tremendous success story. And that's one of the things that we learned in that entire process, is that you can put a value on crop, you can put a value on alfalfa in the field, in a bale stack, you can put a value on cattle in whether it be the dairy barn or in the pasture. But one thing you can't put a value on that balance sheet of life in South Dakota or rural America, is that of community. the rich blessings that we've enjoyed in South Dakota, and we saw that in the sense of community that happened with Winter Storm Atlas. We've also helped out with the Hearing in the Heartland, Renewable Fuel Standard. Went down to Des Moines, worked with Secretary of Agriculture of Iowa, Bill Northey. You know, when you start looking at the leadership of Bill Northey and Governor Terry Branstad, you can't help but get excited. And South Dakota was right there in support of the Renewable Fuel Standard. Personally, I know what the oil fields of Iraq look like, and I know what the cornfields of South Dakota feel like. I will stand by renewable energy every day that we can in South Dakota. 15 plants that add value to our corn in South Dakota. That's over 1 billion gallons of ethanol that takes place in our state. We take it for granted, and we can't take it for granted. And all of agriculture benefits from a diversified ag portfolio to include renewable fuels. Record-setting cattle prices, rail service issues, the Surface Transportation Board hearing. You know, this spring, with all that winter snow, all the cold that slowed the rail down across the upper Midwest, we saw a choke point, a train wreck of sorts ahead of us. And that was the fact that we had a whole lot of corn and a whole lot of commodities that needed to get out of South Dakota or needed to have access to the rail to make it for delivery, but also to bring our inputs into the state. One of the big concerns was not having an adequate fertilizer this spring so that we could put the 2014 crop in. But with the collective effort and friends that are here in the room today, working together, agriculture puts their head and getting square in the harness, their shoulders in the harness, puts their heads together and working with whether it be our elected officials, our members of our congressional delegation, to our governor, providing that leadership to help support and open up for our folks that are part of the rail infrastructure here in South Dakota. Dairy development success. You know, that's something I'm really proud of. Because when you think about where we're going as a state, we have to add value to the commodities. I would much rather add value to the commodities right here at home instead of putting them on rail and shipping them elsewhere. And how do you do that? You do that through livestock. And dairy is one of those entities that continues to have a growth pattern in South Dakota because we've made it a focus, and we're seeing it with our further processing of brand new Bell brands coming into Brookings. We're seeing it in the number of permits that are coming online with our industries in South Dakota. And a high tide has raised all ships. Value-added agriculture, pork production facilities, vineyards and hop growers, pulse crops, peas and lentils, turkey and goose processing. I talked about dairy processing, and when I referenced the Valley Queen in China, that really was the take-home for me, where it tied it all together and how we interface with our global economy. Because when we're adding value in rural South Dakota, we're doing that by feeding livestock. And when we're feeding livestock, we're getting, in particular dairy, we have the milk that comes from that and the further processing that comes from that. But what we're seeing is that value-added aspect. And when we were at a candy manufacturer, a candy company in Beijing, China, looking at purified milk fat from Millbank, South Dakota as an ingredient, that connected the dots for me. We in South Dakota are absolutely a part of the global economy, and the fact that our processors are adding value to what they produce, and our dairymen and the folks that provide the feed and forage for those facilities across our state, whether you're milking 50 cows, 500 cows, 5,000 cows, all of that adds value to the state of South Dakota. Fresh and local foods, milling and manufacturing, our forestry industry here in western South Dakota, in addition to that, is something to be very proud of. You know, we have 10 primary processors of wood products in western South Dakota and 9 additional that provide secondary processing. And when you think about all the jobs in western South Dakota tied to forestry products, you're just under 1,000 jobs in our state. It's an impressive part of how we add value and produce here in South Dakota. Hurdles ahead, it's pretty clear that we understand that disease emergence and the porcine epidemic diarrhea virus is something that continues to challenge pork production across the upper Midwest and across the country, but we are working on it. And I recently had a meeting with our state veterinarian who's here today, and the technology that's coming online, the research that's going into it, the best practices that are being implemented. We can never sit still, because that's one thing agriculture doesn't do. It never stops. And part of that is we're always looking to look for best ways of doing business. Waters of the U.S., endangered species are all subject areas that we have to be mindful of. Whether you're talking about the northern long-eared bat, or you're talking about sage grouse, if those things make the endangered species list or are part of that dialogue, that changes our production agriculture, it changes forestry practices, it changes our range, our grazing practices. Some of that is part of what production agriculture gets impacted with some of those hurdles out there. Opportunities, environmental sustainability, and infrastructure investment continue to be a focus for us. You know, the farm-to-market roads of the past need to be relevant for the future and today. And that takes a lot of investment, it takes a lot of leadership, and we've got some of that leadership in the room with us today that's helping lead that conversation with Senator Mike Valley on the Department of chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. And he'll be part of our panelists today. So one of the things that we've done this last year is we've put our heads together recognizing that telling ag story requires us to have a very solid understanding of the numbers. And we're in the midst of a very collaborative effort between National Ag Statistics Service, our Department of Agriculture, SDSU, Economics Department, as well as Decision Innovation Solutions. And what we're doing is we're tying together all of those relevant pieces in order to have the best data on behalf of agriculture. And before I forget, in your books today, if there's a takeout that I'd like you to make sure you maintain and have a hold of, and we're going to have it online for our online viewers, is the PDF or the pamphlet that talks about ag statistics in South Dakota. There's some great information in there, and that's just a precursor, executive summary of the data to come out. But part of the major two takeaways is the economic activity of agriculture in South Dakota. We've always known it's been a big number, and it continues to be a big number. 25.6 billion, or as Deputy Wasweet shared with you, 30% of the state. Total production agriculture and related industries accounted for 115,651 jobs, or at least 1 out of every 5 South Dakotans tied into production agriculture. South Dakota output by industry, again, these charts are in that pamphlet, but the thing that I wanted to share with you on this, with that $25.6 billion number, you start looking at what does crops and livestock and other ag, and that's that pie chart off to the side. And when you're looking at other ag, that represent all of the service and support industries, from our veterinarians to the folks that provide our crop consulting, to really the aspects that provide service and support into agriculture. Crops represent really 13.3 billion of that, and livestock is at 8.5 billion. So a very big number in the pie chart of South Dakota. There's a lot of diversity, and what I'm excited to see outside of agriculture is the growing diversity of economics in South Dakota. The fact that we've been selected as the #1 most business-friendly state to do business in the country, you'll see the rest of that pie chart continue to grow and provide diversity. Exciting time for the future of South Dakota as well as agriculture. So just a couple slides on some quick stats, and it's always important for us to know where we're at today. What are the benchmarks that we sometimes take for granted? You know, we know that corn is big in South Dakota. We're #6 in the country, and last year's bin-busting crops came in at 808 million bushels. #8 in soybeans at 183 bushels. #7 in all wheat, spring wheat, winter wheat, 77 million bushels. #1 in oats in the country. #1 in oats. Now that's a smaller number in comparison, but there's still a demand out there that we're meeting, and it's 9 million bushels. #2 in millet with 5.5 million, and #3 in flaxseed at 120,000. Looking at sorghum for grain, 22 million bushels. Now this is the second point. We're #1 in sunflowers, and I keep being reminded by our friends to the north, they're gladly and probably are going to take that title back. So we go back and forth with North Dakota. This year we happen to get the #1 slot, but that's a lot of pounds of sunflowers. Honey production, our pollinators, our forage, our conservation, all of that comes together, and we see that in our #3 honey industry, our #3 industry in the country in terms of honey rankings, with 14.8 million pounds of honey. #6 in hay of all production, 5.9 million tons. The thing about that, though, is #4 in alfalfa hay. And when we talk about livestock, we talk about dairy, that's a really interesting number to me, because being #4 in the country in this forage means that we have a lot of opportunity for growth, because a lot of that gets shipped out of state, and we could be feeding it in state. State rank in agriculture for cattle and calves, number 8 in the country. 3.65 million head of cattle. In terms of beef cows, that number is the number of cows that have calves at their side in the pastures this year is 1.635 million. The calf crop in 2013 was just under 1.7 million head. Number 7, or the number 7 in cattle on feed, when you think about that size of cattle on feed, number 7 in the country, 310,000 head on feed. When we talk about opportunity and we talk about adding value to what we do here in our state, that's how we do it. All that grain that we have that we're shipping out on rail, let's get that cattle on feed number and a much higher number. And how are we going to do that? Is to continue to keep our sights on the future. And we know that economic development sometimes takes a lot of hard work. And when you have a beef processing plant in northeastern South Dakota, there's a lot of hard work and sometimes there's some setbacks. And sometimes those setbacks hurt. But never forget that economic development doesn't come gift wrapped with a bow on it. And it takes work, it takes effort. And when you look at the number of cattle on feed and what could be fed and finished in our state, that's the real opportunity and the continued vision there long term. Number 21 in milk cows for the state, or for the country, at 96,000 head. And in the last 9 months, we've seen over 20,000 head of dairy cattle permitted in the state. We hope to see that number grow significantly in the year and 2 and 3 ahead. And the reason is we live in the milk shed of the upper Midwest. That drought monitor I showed you earlier showed the drought in the southwest part of our country. That's opportunity for the upper Midwest. We have the feed, we have the water, and we have the value-added processing all up and down the I-29 corridor, all the way out west to our Pollock and Hovind plants, all the way east into Minnesota and even northwestern Iowa. The state-of-the-art processing that exists in dairy is why we see that number 21 number going to continue to grow. And if you go back to the 1960s, we had over 260,000 head of dairy cattle in the state. We're just trying to bring home the cows. Number 1 in bison, with a little over 33,000 head in the state. Number 6 in the country for sheep and lambs at 270,000 head. Number 2 with the lamb crop last year at 230,000. Number 6 in wool production. Number 11 in hogs and pigs at 1.2 million. Just anecdotally, I will share with you recently we returned back from China. And 1.2 million sounds like a lot of pigs. And if you look at the pig population in our country, it's right around 70 million. And when you go to China and you're looking at 1.4 billion people, and you think that we have a lot of pigs, they're raising 650 million pigs in China. But the problem is, or the opportunity for us with our technology, is the fact that they have a hard time with the mortality rate. They're losing between 30 and 40% of their young pigs. And that's an incredible mortality rate. And so part of that is our best science, our best practices here in our country that add value. It might be some of the feed procurement opportunities. It might be some of the vaccinations, you name it, we might have that opportunity. And number 9 in pig crop, in terms of the number of pigs that are processed here in South Dakota, raised 3.7 million. Real quickly, the next generation of livestock production. This is something that we started down the road of in 2012, really having the dialogue. We have former Secretary Walt Bones in the room with us today. And I remember sitting with Walt at his desk and talking about the future of agriculture in our state. And we kept coming back to the fact that it was really about the next generation of livestock production. What are we doing to ensure the opportunity at the table at opportunity, the space is open, the chair is vacant, ready for that next generation to have a seat and join the future of agriculture in South Dakota. Now I'll share this with you because it's a fun picture for me. Just last week, and for our friends from Minnesota, that is a Minnesota license plate, but this guy was with his cattle ranching friends from South Dakota. I had spoken in Sioux Falls this past Sunday night, and had to grab a quick burger after that, and I met 5 guys in Sioux Falls. As I'm driving out in a very low-profile state vehicle at eye level is this license plate. And I look up in the cab and I see a lot of next-generation enthusiasm. I go down Minnesota Avenue for a couple blocks and I decide I got to talk to them. Turn around and I go back. I go inside and I said, "Whose truck is that?" And they all smiled and pointed at this guy. And this is Tyson from Minnesota. I said, "Nice truck, and I love your license plate." He said, "Well, thanks about the truck. My pigs paid for it." And I tell you what, we exchanged our Twitter handles, so to speak, and we had that picture out. And you know, I don't get a lot of play in social media, but boy, when I set this one out, I got all kinds of people sharing it and forwarding it. And so that's what I'm excited about. That's the future of agriculture. Whether you're looking at Minnesota, Iowa, South Dakota, the rural America next generation is ready to step up. They are stepping up, and the baton of leadership is being handed off at an unprecedented rate. But we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure a successful transition, but encourage our outgoing generation to be teaching and continuing to transfer their lessons learned. Because young guys like this have the heart and passion, but they need the wisdom of the experience. And we're seeing that collaboration continue to happen. One of the outcomes that I'm proud to share with you that your department's been involved on is county site analysis. And the reason why this is an interesting slide is that one of those other conversations we talked about was embracing local control. What can we do as the State Department of Agriculture to help our local governments have the tools to make decisions for their future, whatever that is? If they want to have value-added agriculture brought in, fantastic. If they'd rather not, that's okay too. But it's about finding where agriculture and the next generation of is welcome. We thought we might get 6 to 8 or 9 counties interested in having their county studied. And how this is that we have to have an official resolution by the county commission requesting the Department of Agriculture to initiate a site analysis of their county. And what that is infrastructure, it's roads, it's water, it's power. It's really where the best sites are at. Well, we're now at 30 counties that have requested county site analysis. I think that's an example of how can we, as your State Department of Agriculture, help you at a local level be the best that you can for your county and your constituents. And real quickly, a couple of exciting things. I just talked about the pork industry in our state. This last year, the legislature, the governor, our industry partners have jumped in and really provided some great support of the upcoming swine research and education unit at South Dakota State University. You know, the fact that it's a regional program, a regional opportunity, it's not just about pork in South Dakota. It's the fact that Minnesota and Iowa have also seen the value in that. And the pork producer councils have, of South Dakota and Minnesota, put $250,000 into that building. And Iowa put $150,000. And the multidiscipline facets of the South Dakota and Minnesota soybeans are working through the pledge process of another $1.5 million. That's collaboration. That's industry, constituents, citizens of South Dakota, people from across the upper Midwest coming together and investing in the future, state of the art. And it's a high time that we continue to step forward and make forward progress in agriculture. And I'm very proud of the people in the room here today that helped with that. I'm thinking right off the top of my head, I know Brenda Foreman was very close to that. Brenda, congratulations. I know Lauren Pankratz was close to that. I know folks that have been doing a lot of hard work on behalf of agriculture in South Dakota are doing that behind the scenes. We also have the cow-calf training and research facility. Beef Bowl. Dean Dunn today shared with me that they're going to have the groundbreaking at the cow-calf unit starting this September at the Beef Bowl at SDSU. That's going to be a $4.6 million facility. So I close with this. We are products of our environment, all of us, across South Dakota. We're from our farm and ranch families. The future is in front of us. The lessons learned are behind us. We take the lessons learned of our past, we incorporate them with the best practices of today, and we continue to march forward to be the best in food production, not only for our country, but for our world. I'm very bullish on the future of agriculture, but the reason I say that is because I've seen the next generation. I've seen the technology that they're incorporating. I've seen the investment willing to be made by industry partners, and we're going to continue to have a very bright future in South Dakota and South Dakota agriculture. And today is a day that we celebrate that, and it's also a day that we continue to sharpen our axe for the future in South Dakota. Thank you very much.
District 29 is with us today. State Representative Betty Olson of District 28B will join us as well. State Representative Lee Qualm of District 21 is here today. State Representative Jim Schaefer from District 26B is here. Good morning, Jim. We are also pleased to have with us Dr. Barry Dunn, Dean of the College of Agriculture and Biological Sciences from South Dakota State University, in the audience today. And we have a number of congressional staff from across the state in field offices. Shad Christman and Chris Blair are here on behalf of Senator Johnson today. We welcome them. Mark Haugen and Lynn Schurzma of Senator Thune's staff are here. And Kyle Holt for Congresswoman Nome is expected to join us today. So we thank all of our special guests, and again, it is our... Good morning, everyone. My name is Trudy Wastwheat, and since last fall, I have been serving the state of South Dakota as your Deputy Secretary of Agriculture. Let me say this morning that it is my pleasure to welcome you to our 5th Annual Governor's Agricultural Summit. The program today was very thoughtfully built to generate dialogue on some of the most challenging and interesting issues South Dakota's farmers and ranchers and agribusiness industry partners are facing today. And we also want to lift topics for discussion that are part of our decision-making process as we influence those who are making decisions in our counties, in our state, and also at a national level here. There's much to be discussed on the program today, and we look forward to that conversation. We know how critical it is when we look around South Dakota and recognize that agriculture provides some 30% of the state's economic activity. So healthy consideration of these challenges and these issues is really important for us today. And so we are very glad to have all of you with us here in Deadwood. I want to start also this morning by giving generous thanks to our sponsors of the 5th Annual Governor's Ag Summit. Because of their support, we are able to present this conference without a registration fee, have some very enjoyable networking breaks throughout our program today, and learn from really remarkable subject matter experts on our program. The sponsorship from our partners really reflects the value that these folks have put on this kind of conversation about the future of South Dakota's agriculture industry and the returns that strategically can come back to businesses and their customers when we have these healthy conversations. Through the day, I will recognize our sponsoring partners individually, but as we begin our program this morning, I do want to give a very generous message of appreciation to their support of this summit. So thank you to our summit sponsors. I also will note, for the first time this year, because of the generous sponsorship we have for the summit, we are able to provide a live webcast of the summit program throughout the day on South Dakota Public Television, and you'll be able to go online and also find archived video after the program today. In a few moments, I will welcome Secretary of Agriculture Lucas Lentsch to the stage to discuss the state of agriculture in South Dakota. But before that, I would like to introduce some of our special guests this morning who are a great pleasure to have them with us at the summit. First of all, Undersecretary of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Michael Skuse, is with us today, and he'll actually be joining us on a update about the Farm Bill in a few moments. We also have with us today State Conservationist Jeff Zimbrick from the Natural Resource and Conservation Service, who also is on a panel with us this afternoon. We welcome Elsie Meeks, the State Director for USDA's Rural Development Program, and hopefully she's making it in this morning, but we know that she's here for the day. Craig Shoneman is our Executive Director in South Dakota for the Farm Service Agency, and we welcome him to the summit. We also have State Senator Mike Valley from District 20, who will be joining our transportation panel later this morning as well. State Representative Gary Kamak,